Hello and welcome. This is the Piper Arrow 3 by JustFlight. It's now available in Microsoft Flight Simulator. It was available in X-Plane 11 and also in Prepare 3D, but now it's in Microsoft Flight Simulator. So if you have been looking for a more familiar plane in this sim, now you do have that option. It's the first plane released for Microsoft Flight Simulator by JustFlight. And we're just going to jump into the cockpit. I'm going to bring up this little screen here. So if you're wondering how to bring this up, left click once and it will disappear, left click again and it will bring it up. Another thing I want to mention very quickly is if I go over to camera, I change my pilot view to co-pilot, have a little look down here, there is a switch. It's not easy to see from the pilot seat, and you can switch this to 3 positions. I'm going to put it in the middle position, but if you're wondering why your gear is not working, there's this switch and then there's also this switch. So both are related to your gear. So just something to be aware of. I'm going to change it back to pilot view. You'll notice we've got some different views here. Close view, landing view, and then also pilot view. So they're modified on my plane, and also the windows are modified. So you notice my windows are nice and clear. Now you can do a little bit of modification of the plane by going to the clean directory and reading the instruction manual. But I've actually gone a little bit further and we've got clean carpets, we've got clean seats, and we've got a clean looking roof, so none of this is worn up here. So just something you can do if you want to enhance your plane further and you'd like a clean version. If you like the dirty or older version, then no problem, you don't need to do anything. Just if you want to go a little bit further and change things up and customize it, you're welcome to do so. I'll leave links in the description of the video on how to do it. You can see that's also cleaned up there as well. So great work to the people who did do this. It's really, really fantastic. So I'm just going to go over to here, quickly show you all the doors open and the tow bar from outside. You can see the doors are open. At the end of this video, I'm going to show this plane in a lot more closer detail. So that's the plane. I'm just going to jump back into the inside. We're going to close all that off now. Be aware that you can change in here your GNS. So you can change it to a 100, 430, 530, or whatever you want. But I'm just going to leave it on the 530. Auto fuel selector will mean it will change this switch here for you every 10 minutes. You can do it yourself manually if you want. But if you don't want to, well, you've got the switch, which is great. It's really, really good for gaming purposes and quality of life. The yokes, you can see my yokes are clean. They're not worn like the original version. So that's another change which I've done. And really the big one is the windscreen, because the plane comes with like tinting on the windscreen, and you have such wonderful graphics in Microsoft Flight Simulator. You want to be able to see the graphics in their glorious detail. Tinting is probably realistic, but I really do prefer it with it nice and clear. So just something you can do. Now down here you've got a co-pilot button. What I'm going to show you is not just that you've got a co-pilot, I'm going to show you how you can change the co-pilot. So if you hit escape, click general, go to miscellaneous, do you see this here, pilot avatar? You can change it to whatever you want. So you can have a pilot here for, click apply, click go back, resume, and now you've got a different pilot in the co-pilot seat. So pretty cool as well. I'm going to get rid of them though because I don't really want them on. That's disabled and I don't need to do anything else here. If you want to have a look though, there's flight info and you can switch it over and it'll show you the range. Now I have tested it. I have flown all the way from Hobart, Australia. So yes, I'll try and show you on a map. I have flown from here, Hobart, Australia, all the way over to Queenstown, over here in New Zealand, on the little plane. So I've done that trip in this plane, and that takes about 8 hours. So it reckons it takes only an endurance of 6 hours. I have tested it, it's got about 8 hours. Of course, I'm not considering fuel reserves when I do that, so that could be why I'm getting a little bit further. Also, I've tested the altitude. I've got it up to 16,800 meters. So 16,800 meters is the altitude that I have been able to reach with this plane. I just want to mention too, if you haven't got it, FSPM VFR map. Very, very cool. And I'll put a link to that in the description of the video if I can as well. It's a very, very handy little VFR map. It is an addition to having this map, which is, you know, I can't zoom all the way over to New Zealand very easily with this map. You have to keep scrolling, and so the other one is quite handy to have as an option. Okay, we're going to do a cold and dark start, and then we can describe a few other things to you. I'm going to turn on the battery and the alternator, but what I want to do is I don't want to move the propeller up. I just want to explain this to you. So here's the mixture control. Underneath the mixture control is a toggle mixture lock. Left click that once and you'll notice when it gets down here, it won't go all the way down. So if I now click that button while it's all the way down, and then you'll notice I can release it all the way down to cut. Okay, so if you're wondering why I don't have full movement of this mixture, it could be because of this little mixture lock. So some useful information there. I'm going to leave it on. We're just going to push the propeller all the way up, turn on the fuel pump. Then I'm just going to go down to here. I'm going to switch this to one of the tanks. So just make sure it's not in the off position because that's not good. We want it on the left tank. That's fine. Then we're going to push up our mixture. And you should notice something happening on your fuel flow because you've got the fuel pump on and the battery. So I'm going to turn on the beacon. Throttle is all the way back and I'm going to start it. So right click until it is at both. And then I'll go all the rest of the way. Start, and the engine starts. Now, with most other people's planes, they are revving around about 1000. This one is modified, so it's now currently revving around about 6000. If you have a look, I've got it revving at about 6000. Now, where this is different and where it makes it a change is by default, normally if you took the parking brake off, the plane would start to move. It just moves. There's nothing you can do about it. Now with this change and it revving so low, if I go and take the parking brake off, have a little look what happens. Release parking brake. The plane's not moving. How cool is that? So if that's the change you were looking for, well, that's one way of doing it. I'm going to leave information on how to do that in the description of the video as well. Very, very handy information here in the start of this video if you didn't know these things. So now you can see 6000 and we're just revving nice and slowly. I'm just going to bring it up to around about 3%, 4%, and you'll notice the plane will start to move. Not fast, but it's moving. And if you look at the revs down here, it's just still around about 8,000, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we're just on 6, 7, 8, just above 8. And the plane is starting to move, okay? So we'll start to spin it around. And we'll try and head off towards our runway. Taxi is really easy. It's a very, very stable plane. You can do a loop in the plane. It's not recommended. It's not designed for that. I'm sure they wouldn't do it in real life, but if you just want to play a game and have fun and see if you can do a loop, well, you can. It's physically capable of it. It also can pull itself out of the loop very easily. So it can also recover from stalls very easily. Tested that. But it's just a really, really super stable plane generally. Just taxiing along slowly here. We'll get ourselves off towards the runway. I don't really need the full runway. Just tapping my brakes. If you're finding it difficult to look left and right, slow down, tap the brakes, use the rudder and also your ailerons, and you should find you can turn pretty easily. So you'll notice now I'm just going to tap the brakes slightly and we'll start turning a little bit more sharply. So yeah, there's the little bit of notes on the ground handling there. But otherwise, it's okay. Jump back in our cockpit. Just going to turn on our lights, or if we didn't have them on, we do now. We'll turn on the other light for this, and we'll just quickly have a look up at the roof so we don't crash, and we'll turn it on just very gently. Now, if you haven't seen the night lighting, I'm just going to stop before the runway, and we'll show you that. We do have live traffic on, but it's a pretty quiet airport down here, so I haven't really seen anyone. We're in Hobart, Australia at the moment. And we'll be able to set up our radios and stuff like that as well. So we're just going to bring that throttle back to nothing. Plane will just keep rolling for a little bit, and then we'll apply the brakes. And if I just apply the brakes now, notice the plane won't move anywhere. Don't have to worry about throttle. From a gaming perspective, it's probably a little bit better like this. A bit more enjoyable to use. That throttle is all the way back. We'll just put on the parking brake for a few seconds. Now, what we're going to do is look at our radios and stuff like that, and also show you the night lighting. So I'm going to go up here, just quickly change the weather to something maybe very early morning, so it's almost night, which will be dark enough for our purposes, but we can still see the plane lightly. So there you can see we've got one light here, we've got one light over here, and then we've got the beacon light at the back we've got flashing away. And then you can see the cockpit interior lit up in the red, and we don't have the landing light on at the moment. We'll quickly change that. We go over to here, click on the landing light, and then jump to the rear. You can see now it's not particularly useful. Like, it's not, if you're inside the plane and you're looking outside, it doesn't really light up a lot, to tell you. It's very, very basic, probably like that in real life. But if you look at an external view like this, then it's quite useful. And from the game purposes, well, we can jump to the external view, so I don't find that a problem, but maybe you will. I don't know. But certainly when it's real pitch black and you're inside the plane, you're just trying to navigate with that, you may find it difficult. You're going to find it a lot easier just to jump to external view quickly to taxi around. So we'll change that time of day in a second. What I want to do is just turn off this. And now you can see these lights. So that's what that looks like. A lot of people showed this plane, but they didn't show any of the lights. So I've at least shown you that now as well, and we haven't even taken off. That's pretty good. So I'm going to turn that back on. I'm just going to change the weather to somewhere in the middle of the day. It's a little bit better. It's much brighter now. And we've got our landing light still on. We don't really need that at the moment. I'm not sure what that would do in real life, but I don't need it. So I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to put on this here, the anti-collision light. And if we have a little look, we've got that now on as well. So excellent. Just down here is the light we're talking about, which we switched that little white light here. So if you jump in here and turn off that, you'll notice this doesn't come on. And there's one on the other side as well. So I'll turn it back on, and there's the white light. Okay, so that's what that switch is doing. I'm going to put on the P-type heap just because we can. We'll set up our radios. If I didn't describe it to you already, you can go over to this and you can change it to different pages. Say you want to get back to your map page and you're lost, you can click on CLR here, hold down the left mouse button, keep it held down, it brings you back to the map. Okay, so that's how you can bring yourself back to the map. So just go to some weird page. This one's got sub-menu pages. You can go to whatever sub-menu, get back by holding the CLR, and kaboom, you're back here. I'm going to set up our radios. We're going to use 112.7. So I'm going to change this one to 112.7. I'm going to change this to 374 ADF. 37 and then 4. And we'll just put it into ADF mode. So then it will be functional, and you'll notice when we get in the sky, it'll point towards the direction, towards the ADF. It's the closest one that I'm aware of. Then we're going to change this. Now to switch between COM and VLOC, just push here, push/C/V, it will drop down. Then we just need to change this number. We're going to change it to 112.7 and then make it active. Goes to the top. You'll notice this became active as well. Then I'm going to change this to 109.9. So we've got that one set up as well. The runway heading is 119, so we're going to change this here to 119. So we're all set up and ready to go there. That's 119. It has also changed it here. So this is nav1. These are linked. And if you change this one down here, this is the nav2. going to change that to 119 as well if I can. And we're almost there and done. 119, 119. Now I'm going to change that heading bug to also match that same direction. So I'm going to make it to 119. There we go, that's done. And we're pretty much ready to go. I'm not going to worry about this, but that's your transponder. Whatever your squawk code is, you can change it to that. I'll just turn it on maybe, but I won't be worrying about that too much on this flight. All of these do work, and you can at least move the controls, even if it's not really going to make much difference to you with the air. It's great to see that you can actually move them. So just to the right of this is apparently a friction control. I may as well change myself from the view so you can see what I'm talking about. Copilot. Just to the right of this lever is here. It's supposed to be called a friction control. So if you're wondering what this does, that's friction control. Then there's Alt Air. We're just going to leave it closed for our purposes, but you can switch that if you need to. And we're also going to jump back to the pilot seat, but just so you can see those switches so you understand that they are there. This does scroll down, okay, so they move. That is actually somewhat useful. And this here you can open and close with a switch. The doors, they have two buttons, so you have one latch up here, and then this one will release and it will open up, and then you click here to close, click here to lock, and then click here to lock, and that will seal it. And it will just change the sound if you have it open while you're flying. Sounds, yeah, they're pretty good in this plane. They're okay. I don't have any particular complaints. So let's jump in our plane. I do think it's possible to create a better module than this, but this is a great start. And if you had really used this plane in the other sims, it's just really great to see it in this game as well. We'll get ourselves off towards the runway now and we'll take off. So we're going to take off that parking brake. We've got our flaps out at 25. I don't really want it that much. We'll put it on flaps 10. There's the plane that's moving. Bring up our throttle a little bit. We'll maybe put it to 6 just to get ourselves towards the runway. You can see our flaps here. If I change them, we'll just show you. That's full flaps, flaps all the way in, and then flaps 10. Okay, so I'm just using F5, F8, and F7 to do that on the keyboard. Of course, you've got your rudder. Bring ourselves off towards the runway. Very, very quiet airport, this one, which is great for my purposes. And we'll take off and we'll show you the plane flying. So I'm just going to give it full throttle now. Now, it'll take off around about 65, 70. By the time you start pulling back, it'll be past 70. So 65, you pull back, it's past 70, and then it's at 80 and it's off the ground. Okay, so that's what you're looking at in terms of takeoff. F5 on the keyboard and gear in. I just want to demonstrate to you while we can that little switch down here. So it'll actually bring the gear in automatically for us. So say I go and bring the throttle back. We'll run it around about 31%, 32%. Look at that. It's brought out the gear. So the speed has been quite low. It's below 87, 85, and it's brought the gear out. So now to bring it back in, we're just going to move this switch all the way up. I'm going to push G on the keyboard to bring the gear in, and the gear comes in. And we'll just test that again. So I'm going to bring that throttle back to around about 30 something. Watch the speed. And the gears come out automatically, okay? So that's when you have the setting in the middle. So you can't forget to bring your gear out with this plane. And of course that's the stall warning. Just going to give it a little bit more throttle. Now I know a lot of people like doing stall tests and stuff, that's great. But can it do a loop? Well, I'm just going to show you it can do a loop, and you would never do it in this plane because it says here no acrobatic maneuvers. But we're playing a computer game and you may just want to do a loop. So I'll show you that it can do it. Just at full throttle. I'll bring it back a touch from full throttle, 95, 95. We'll go into a shallow dive. We're not very high up, just 1.5. And then we're going to do, as you can see, we're going up, going around. We can look out our window, coming around. And then it's got to recover. So this is the hard part. Can it recover in time? And look, see, it's recovered. Even from such a shallow altitude, it can do a loop. So you understand that. As for stall behavior, well, if we demonstrated a little bit before with the gear, but if I just go and bring the throttle back and then point the nose up, I'm not putting the throttle too far back so we don't get the gear warning sound. It should stall around about now. There's the stall warning, and it can just hold here almost. And then we'll let it recover just by pointing the nose down a little bit. We're very, very shallow at the moment, not very high up, only 1,000, 1,500 feet. And we'll just give that throttle again, and it recovers. So if you're wondering what happens if you just cut the throttle, you'll get a warning here about the gear. So cut the throttle. Here's the gear warning. The gear won't come out because it's not at the right speed, but it gives you that gear warning. So that's those two sounds. We'll head off in this direction. The runway should be behind us somewhere. We'll just check that. There's the runway. And if we want, we can do a little bit of a search for this ADF 374. So if we had to head towards that, we have to go in that direction. We'll head off towards that. It's not very far. So we'll do a little flight towards that. We could even have a little look at Hobart. Hobart in this game actually has photogrammetry. So that's very, very cool. You haven't checked out Hobart in Microsoft Flight Simulator. It's got photogrammetry. You know about this airport now. You know the numbers that you need. The two numbers you need are 112.7 and 109.9. Where you can find those numbers, I'll also try and add in the description of the video. There's going to be a lot of information in the description of the video. But hopefully you picked up a few different things in this video over some others by this point in the video. So we'll keep heading out towards this ADF. Now we know we're over the top of it when it'll flip around. So it'll spin around to the other side and point back in that direction, saying it's behind us. And then we know we've basically flown over the top of it. So I know roughly where the location is on the ground. If we go up here, we can see our map, FSPM VFR map, and I spin down here, and we can see ourselves on the map here. So the airport is over here somewhere. Close that view again. Brings us back to here. Running about 51 frames per second at the moment, Microsoft Flight Simulator. We're using our 3080 graphics card, NVIDIA 3080. And it's a 3900X as a CPU. I haven't been able to upgrade it because we can't get our hands on any faster CPUs at the moment. They're just not available in stock at this time. This is in March 2021. But we are running a 3080 graphics card. And you can see the frames in the bottom left corner. So we'll have a little look at our ADF information here. It's saying to go left a little bit, so we'll go left a little bit. I basically know the location on the ground where this is, so I can look on the ground and see it. 112.7, and then we'll use this information to find our way back to the airport so we don't get lost. 374, you'll notice if I change it off that, go straight, and I go and change it back to 374, and then it points me in the direction of where I need to go. So somewhere in front of us is where we need to go at the moment. We're just about 3,000 feet. Few little hills around here, nothing extraordinarily high that this plane can't handle. It's able to climb its way out of trouble pretty easily around here. I believe the NDB could be down there somewhere. We'll just bring this mixture back to around about 80. We'll bring the throttle back to around about 80. I believe a crease throttle would be around about 75. Not sure, but 80 will do for my purposes just this moment. So we'll notice now it's pointing in that direction, and I believe that the NDB is just here on the ground, just in front of us. So if we go and watch this, have a little look as we fly over the top of it. It should flip around. There we go. And now suddenly it's behind us. Okay, so that point on the ground is around about there. And now it's pointing behind us. So that's how this works. That is operational in the plane, no problems there. We'll just turn on this by right-clicking once, and we can see we're 12.8, 12.9. You can check a second frequency if you want. So this can handle two of them, and then look at the second frequency here. I'm not going to worry about that. We're just going to look at this one, but 13.2. It is very, very handy, though. I just want to point that out. It's very, very handy that it can actually check two of them at once. So that is a very, very useful feature. So airport is over this way. I'm going to spin to the right a little bit. Bridge down there. To get ourselves lined up with the 119 degrees, first we want to get ourselves onto it. So I'm just going to fly almost 90 degrees into the yellow circle to bring that line in. We can see it coming in, so I'm going to keep turning because it's going to come in so quickly, and try and get our plane heading towards the top. There we go. We're almost close. We'll just keep going left a little bit. Just left a little bit. There we go. And then level it out. Straight. And we're done. Done. So now we just can fly straight. Now, as for our navigation, well, we're using 112.7 up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go down to here. I'm going to switch this to nav mode. Now, you don't need to turn on autopilot or the heading mode, okay? I'm not touching them. And what I will do is I can also put on altitude hold, so I can hold altitude. So I'm going to left click that once, altitude hold enabled, then left click and left click again, so it's on nav mode. And that's it. This down here is on nav 1, and this up here is on nav 1. Okay, my number I'm using is 112.7 for Hobart Airport. And we'll just not worry about our altitude too much. It's not going to control your glide slope, but we're just trying to show that it can point its way towards the airport at this point in time. We can see the airport over there. Just going a little bit right to try and get ourselves in line up with it. Also, we don't want to go down because they've got a little bit of a hill here. We're on nav mode, and we're on VLOC. Now, if you click on CDI here, you can also do the same thing by clicking here on nav 1, nav 2 off. So if you click on this text here, it will do the same thing. It will change this button here, which is CDI, switching between GPS or VLOC. Those two things do the same thing. There's the airport over there. We're just on 112.7. I'm hoping it will start turning left a little bit. There we go. So we can see the autopilot's working, and it's going to keep us sort of lined up with that runway over there. 112.7. Now at some point you can take over when it gets around the middle mark, or whenever you feel comfortable taking over, and just hand fly it in. You've got the glide slope here, so this one is the up and down, and this one here is whether you need to go left and right. At the moment we need to go left ever so slightly, and also here it's showing go left a little bit. We know we're heading towards it. Mixture's at 80 and the throttle's at 80 at the moment. But yes, if you're wondering, you don't need to hit on this autopilot or the heading button in order to get it to start following a VOR. So the VOR is 112.7. It's over there, the runway. It's not particularly well lined up. So if you want to, you could change it to 109.9. And then you can go down here, switch it to Omni, and then watch as it gets a little bit closer. It'll hopefully start bringing this line into the right. So now we're on 109.9. Slowly bring this in. We can see our glide slope information here is still a little bit above. I'm just going to switch it all the way over to lock norm. .9 with VLOC. Still got to go right a little bit, but it should turn left as it starts to come through. I'll let it do that one turn and then I'll take over. Just want to show that it's operational. We want it to make it that turn to the left. And it's not done very much at all. We're certainly at a point here where we would need to reassess. So I'm just going to turn it on to heading. I'm then going to take over. Altitude hold is disabled. Bring back that mixture, bring back the throttle. And we can hand fly it in with this. So we're way too high at the moment. Flaps out, gear down. You would normally check to make sure you're at the right speed, but just trying to make sure we can land. Now I have tested all of these modes. And I made a video showing me testing them all, but then that didn't work out, so I haven't got that to show you. Here's our speed. We're lined up a little bit better now. Give ourselves a bit more throttle. Very easy to cut speed on this plane. Not difficult at all. .58. Should be a little bit higher. And now we should be on glide slope. So we're left and left. You can see how my plane is coming in at an angle because of the wind. So not the easiest landing, this one. That's where we're coming in, sideways. And we'll just gently put it on the ground. Cut the throttle when we're just a little bit above the ground. So cut the throttle now. And then the nose down, and we're down. So that was pretty easy. Now, it doesn't need a lot of runway, this plane. So I'll show you just in this length of the runway, we can take off again. We don't even need to back up and do anything else. Just come to a stop. Very gently on the runway. We're on the ground. So now we're going to take off again. It's not really a touch and go. We're just proving that we can actually come to a full stop. Going to give it full throttle. The mixture should be full, so we're just going to push that up as well. And then we'll pull back at around 65. Certainly a lot of wind going on here. Bring the gear up and F5. Gears up. I'll just show you the weather so you can see I'm on live weather. It's a different time of day, but live weather. So apparently it's very windy at the moment. We'll just close that and spin it around. And we'll look at our left wing. We should begin to see the runway. There we go. Then we'll head out this way again. And we'll fly in that direction. So that was the 109.9 yens. We'll just change it back to 112.7. The ILS is the 109.9 and the 112.7 is our nav. We can see our distance at the moment, we're pretty close. 0.6, of course, that's where it is down there. So you'll get to see more than one landing in this video, which is good too, because some people just show one landing. We'll try and show you a few different landings. I'll try and show you what will happen if I leave it in GPS mode and put it on nav. Did see a lot of people mentioning they have more like putting it on nav 2 and using this and changing this to nav 2. You're welcome to try that if you're having difficulty. I have tested it with just landing with VLOC and then putting it on nav and Omni. So I have tested that. Of course, heading just does heading. To put it in the heading mode, leave it where it is, and then just click on heading, and it will follow the heading bug here. But that's not particularly useful for landing. So we're going to change this now to GPS. We'll go out to around about 7, and then we'll spin it around, and we'll see if it can come in on the GPS. This altitude hold is disabled, and it's just in the middle at the moment. But just be aware that you don't need to turn on autopilot and heading mode to get this operational. As soon as you flick this switch to nav or Omni, it will start tracking the coupler. And then also be aware that the CDI button here, changing from VLOC to GPS, that's the same as clicking here. So it's changing VLOC, GPS, VLOC, GPS. But above and beyond that, down here, you've got a little switch to change from nav 1 to, or just turn it off entirely. So there's that as well. And yeah, just be aware that if you click on here on the Piper altitude hold, that will change this over here, the elevation. So you may find you've got some strange elevation going on. I'm just going to put it to 0. Where's our plane? There we go. The runway is over that way somewhere. So we turn left and then spin around and we can try the GPS. 112.7. So all I'm going to do is switch this here to nav mode. We'll spin it around. .2 out. feel like we could line up a little bit better, so I'm just going to change the V-lock to have a little look. Okay, change it back to GPS. There's our runway, and we're just going to go down to here, put on altitude hold, and then change it to nav. Let's see what happens. So it's on GPS, it's on nav, and it's on altitude hold. The number it's using is 112.7, which is also up here. And you can try this out yourself and see if you get a different experience, but if you can see, the GPS is not checking anything. Cool. We'll change it back to V-lock, change it back to heading, and we've got the control of the plane back. We're just at 4.7. And we'll show you the other modes so that you can actually see them and make up your own mind. I'll level it out. Bring it out to around about 6. And we'll just go through all the modes. So we're on V-lock, we're on 112.7. We'll now show you the nav Omni mode. So we'll spin it around. Bring that yellow line in towards us, just a little bit, keep turning because it's coming in quite quickly. Runway should be in front of us any second. Here we go, lined up with the runway. There's the runway. Gonna go down to here, change this to Omni. Let's have a little look what this does. This is just on Omni. And at some point with this plane, with all the modes, you're going to have to disable autopilot, make a decision and start hand flying it in. Like, as long as you know the runway is over there, then you're going to have to hand fly it in with this. So for instance, we're just using Omni at the moment. We make a decision. The middle marker for this is around about here somewhere, just a little bit of an island. So it's a good sort of visual reference. You can see it's sort of turning left at the moment, but it's not really where we need to be. So I'm going to call it. I'm going to take it off, that mode. And then we'll just start hand flying it in. So I'm going to bring that throttle back. I'm going to start straightening it up. Keep bringing that throttle back. Flaps out. And of course you'll be dropping the gear when you had your speed much lower. You're going to see me dropping the gear quite early. I've whacked the gear. I'm more concerned the gear actually comes out. You can see the gear has come out. No more of the warning. Just going to give it a little bit more throttle because it's going to struggle otherwise. There's the middle marker. So we've taken over around about the middle marker. And you can see here it's wanting to go hard left on the 112.7. I'll change it to 109.9. I'm not going to use it particularly, but we can see the glide slope information here. So it's saying climb a little bit, climb a little bit. We're pretty much lined up with it. Climb a little bit. Keep climbing. We're quite in alignment with the runway, just got to climb. Now we can watch the glide slope as we come down. So keep descending. Keep ourselves on the glide slope. Again, look at the winds that I'm dealing with. My plane's not flying in straight at all. So this is, I suppose, a more challenging kind of landing that we're doing here. So it's saying go down a little bit to get on glide slope, down a little bit, and at this point we can pretty much just visually land the plane. So we're just going to keep ourselves going straight here. Testing some pretty difficult winds and conditions. Idle power. And you can see how it dealt with that. And then just keep yourself on the runway. Don't have to apply that brake quickly. You can just let it run along. And then apply the brake. Bring yourself to a stop. You can bring in that flaps. There's a small little sound when you tap the brakes and it comes to a stop. And then we can take off again. How many videos actually show you free takeoffs and landings? Well, let's do that. So I'm going to take off again. Watching my speed. 60, 65. That wind is crazy. We're off the ground. 60. Bring the flaps in. And I mean, there's not much point testing this in perfect weather conditions. You want to see how it handles the more difficult. But overall, very, very stable. But you can still have fun with it. If it's semi-realistic to what the real plane is, then great. I'm all for that. And I love the fact they added a few things in here just for quality of life, like altitude hold, because that just makes, if you're going to make a long range flight and you just want to go away and grab a drink or get a coffee or something, come back to your computer, well, it's not going to crash land on you. So that's just super, super useful to have that altitude hold there. You can bring this up. What I didn't mention was just down here, you've got a timer. So this is the current time of day. And then you click here on mode and you can click start and it will start a timer. Now at the moment it's doing seconds and minutes. After it gets to 1 hour, it'll change to minutes and hours. And that's more than suitable for a little plane like this. So that's useful. Start it up when you take off for your flight, get rid of the yoke, get rid of that, and then you're good to go. So we'll just come back around and then we'll land. And then at the end of this video, there's quite a bit of detail on the closeness, and I'll show the original version of the plane. So not this modified version, but then at least in this video, you've seen everything. Like there's not really anything left. You've seen how the ADF works. You've seen how the V-lock works. You can see the middle marker light coming up there at the moment. There's also an outer marker. We know those lights are working. We can try the autopilot. If I just go and whack on autopilot, you'll notice what happens. Not a terrible lot. So then I say roll right and have a little look. So it rolls right and then have a little look, rolls left. And then I click here for altitude hold and then it'll hold the altitude. So then I can just control the plane with this. So say I want to roll left, it's rolling left. Say I want to roll right, it'll now roll right. So that's how the autopilot button there works. And if you click heading button, that will override the autopilot button. Okay, so just be aware of that. I'm going to turn that off, center that again. And then we're going to turn on the heading bug. So here's the heading bug here. Turn on heading bug on. This whole time I've got altitude hold on, or I haven't. I've got it back on again. So there's the heading bug. So now I go and turn this around. So say I want to go right, it'll go to the right. And I spin it to the other side. It's going to take me a few seconds, but I'll do. And you'll notice it'll very slowly start heading over towards that direction on the left. So you can sort of control the plane with this as well. I'm just going to change it back to 119. And then I'm going to turn it off. So heading off. So that explains those two things down there, which you've seen now. This here, you've got nav, omni, and then lock norm. Really, the most success I've had is just put it on nav and have this on VLOC, and it will get yourself lined up with the runway. If you want to change it to lock norm and put it onto 109.9, feel free. What I'll do this time is we're going to do 109.9, and I'm just going to drop it on nav, and we'll show you how that works. I've had the most success with that. We can put our landing lights on for fun. So runway is over there at the moment. And we can see how far out we are, about 7.1, 7.2. We know we've got to go to the right a little bit because the yellow line's over here, but it's behind us, so it's all telling us the correct information. Get some glide slope information here. Not particularly bothered by the glide slope information. Can take a little while to descend. If you're trying to descend from 16,800, it will take a little while to descend. Keep spinning it around quickly because we need to. There we go. Runway's in front of us a little bit. Keep going in this direction just a little bit. And then straighten it up. And it should be directly in front of us for now. There's the runway. So we've got it on 109.9. And then I'm going to show you what happens if I go and switch it to nav mode. So altitude hold on. Nav mode. And it's not working at all. I'm going to take it off that. Change this to GPS, then to VLOC. Just want to check what's going on with this. Negative 1.1, okay. That is locked off. We're 6.4, 6.3 out, so we could be a little bit far to activate it. It'll get a signal pretty soon. ILS 12. The autopilot is off, you'll notice, and the heading mode is off. We've got this changed to VLOC. It's on 109.9. Straighten it up. We're now at 5.6 away. Keep manually flying it in a little bit. Just above 1,000. Turn on the altitude hold. Altitude hold enabled. Then we're just going to change this to nav. And you'll see it'll point towards the right. It's on VLOC. And we're in the outer marker. And then when we get to the middle marker, we'll turn it off. 3.7 at the moment, 3.6. We're running this throttle really high. We'll just bring that throttle back. This can also come back to, I don't know, 75. We'll use that magic number. And then this can be 70. When we bring the gear down, it really needs a bit of throttle. So as soon as we see the middle marker, I'll start taking over. And you can see it's sort of getting ourselves towards it. Pretty close now. So we switch it off, pretty close to the middle marker. So there's the middle marker, switch it off. Bring that throttle back. Flaps out. Watch that speed come down. We'll cut the throttle. And then the gear should come down automatically once it gets below that certain speed. So we'll just watch that. There we go. I didn't push anything and the gears come down automatically. Still dealing with some really strong winds here, and we've got a crazy glide slope, of course, but we should have taken that over a little bit earlier. Here we go, we're coming in. A bit close to where we should be on the glide slope now. As you can see the glide slope there. It's looking a bit more normal, but we're coming down pretty quickly. Just ease it up. Again, look at how we're coming in sideways here. And then bring that throttle to idle. And straighten it up. And we're on the ground, let it roll out a little bit. And then apply the wheel brakes. Come to a stop. And we might just do one more takeoff and landing, and we'll just do it completely manually this time without the auto throttle, because to be honest, that's probably the main way you're going to be flying this plane. Just get yourself towards the airport, and then visually look at the airport and land. Off the ground, gear in. We didn't use any flaps then, so we'll demonstrate that as well. I don't know if we can see a windsock, but I imagine it would be interesting to look at on this runway. There is the windsock. I want to show you the windsock. So you can see the windsock down there. And it's like, it's full, like half flying, it's full flying. So it's quite strong winds coming across the runway at the moment. And again, of course, we're just running it with the live weather, but a different time of day. So we'll head off this way. We're just going to do a manual landing this time. The autopilot's more like a guide to get yourself towards the runway, but at some point with this plane, you need to switch it off. Like, you're just not going to be able to use this to get yourself on the ground. It's not that capability, and it hasn't got glide slope capability. So as you can see, if you switch it off too late, you're giving yourself quite a challenge to sort of put it on the ground. And it really is not following that glide slope. So we're going to bring it out, I don't know, about 8, and then we'll come in and we'll just try and manually fly it in this time. We got it on 109.9 here. This is just in heading mode in the center, off and off, and the roll, of course, is in the center, but doesn't really matter. We'll bring this out to about 8. Our mixture, we'll just leave it 75 for this attempt. Propeller, you could bring that back, but I'll just let that go as it is at the moment. And that's where really the fun of this plane comes in, is being able to play with these throttle, the propeller, and the mixture, and seeing how it handles with this plane. That's really where the fun is. If you want to simulate what you do in real life, sure, you can do that. But just as a gamer, from a gaming perspective, this is where the real fun is. Playing with the throttle, the propeller, the mixture, looking at this and making sure you're lining up correctly with the plane for your landing, making sure you're doing the glide slope. This plane forces you to do the glide slope manually, so that's really where the fun aspect comes in. And of course, loading the instruments. We can see our fuel down here. We've been doing quite a bit of flying, and we've still got quite a bit of fuel. Just show you the fuel from up here, 38%. So we used, what, 12% fuel in this video? That's all we've used. All temp, all pressure, amps, there's all that. I don't know what else I can particularly show you. With this plane, flaps are 0. There's a little emergency thing here, but again, you wouldn't really need that because we just reload the game if we have an emergency. You can put this on just so you can see what's happening with the yoke a little bit. We can see our glide slope and stuff information. They're only 4.7 out, so I'm not worrying too much about that just at the moment. We can switch it to 112.7. Six 6.3, 6.4, 6.5. And we'll try and use the glide slope to bring us in all the way this time now. Just make sure that this is centered for me, so it's not really centered. Not cool. Five, four, three, two, one. There we go, it's centered. I'm not going to put on the altitude hold this attempt, you see, so you can see it's disabled. And we're in nav mode. You can tell because it says GPS mode to GPS. We don't want to switch to the GPS mode on this attempt. We can see our information up here. We're around about 8.1 now, 8.2 out. So I'll spin it around in a second, and then we'll just hand fly it in and we'll show you that process. Just going to keep an eye on my speed. Bringing that to 75, 75, so we're using those two magical numbers. But the propeller is full. The fuel pump is on. Here we go, 9.1, 9.2. I'll just go out to 10 just so that I have a magical number. Doing 103 knots, 9.5. One thing to point out, you can see the air temperature up here. Not particularly warm, but you can see that. 9.9. 10. So we'll start to spin it around because it'll hit 10.1, 10.1. We'll fly this into the yellow line. That's the first thing I'm going to do. You would normally go 30 degrees or whatever, but I'm just going to fly straight at it. So I'm flying 90 degrees to that. Runway is off there to our left somewhere. We're just going to get ourselves on that alignment. Just check our alignment course information. So 119 is the number we want. This is 119, 119, and 119. We'll change it to 119. It's coming in very quick, so we're going to spin. Spin. Bring it around to about here. And just do that last little bit. And then straighten it up. So then, now we know we're lined up with the runway. We can see the runway over here. We're looking at our glide slope. Now, at the moment, it's a little bit above us, but it's coming down to us. So I can just let that glide slope come to us at the moment. Don't really need to climb to match it. We are going to go right a little bit. And now we're on the glide slope. So now we just need to follow this line here. Now we can watch our speed. So we're just going to bring that throttle back to 70. And we can prepare ourselves with flaps and gear and all that sort of stuff as we get closer. So we're just watching these two. This is what we're going to do to fly ourselves in. Need to go right a little bit. And then need to go down, need to descend, because it's the glide slope saying go down. So keeping ourselves there on the glide slope. Keep descending. Keep going to the right. What is really difficult, look at my angle. That wind is really strong. So this is somewhat the most challenging sort of version of a landing. Normally you wouldn't have it this challenging. So we're just going to keep going along here, keeping ourselves on the glide slope. So we're doing this manually now. We have to point the nose to the right a little bit because of those winds. They're very, very strong winds. You can see ourselves on the glide slope here. Just coming in. Now I could bring ourselves out to the first stage of flaps, so F7. It's going to make things a little bit more challenging for me, but now it's saying go to the left a little bit. Not a lot, but just a little bit. So we can do left easy because of the wind. I'm not going to pull it all the way in the nose because the wind's actually going to help us. You can see it's coming over. And then we've got to point against the wind again. So glide slope, watch the glide slope. There we go. Just watching that glide slope. Then we're going to bring the throttle down a little bit more to around about 60. I can say it's 75 for now. Keep it to the right a little bit. Trying to stay on that glide slope. 109.9. There's nothing really else we need to worry about. We're mostly just looking at this and what we can see outside the plane now. We can change to other views like that and that. Or we could change to close view. Like so. So now we can just watch this. And we can see our runway over there. You can see our speed. We can see we're just staying on the glide slope. So what happens if we want to put full flaps out? Well, I'm going to put full flaps out and then I'm going to put my gear out when the speed gets down. Well, in fact, the gear is going to come down by itself. So we'll just watch that, see if that happens. Just keep watching these two. There's the speed coming down. Keeping ourselves on the glide slope. All I've done is extend the flaps, okay? So flaps fully extended. It's not so noisy outside. Just coming in on the glide slope. We've extended the flaps, still keeping ourselves on it. It says it wants us to go down a little bit more. I'll just have a little look at that so I can glimpse it. Need to go left. You can just visually tell we need to go left right now. Okay, this warning is not letting the gear out. So the speed is just not coming down enough. So I'm going to bring it down just a little bit more, maybe 55. Keep our speed coming down. We'll zoom out a little bit so you can see what's going on. Watching that speed. If it does deploy by itself, that would be cool. I'm going to deploy it myself by pushing G. Out comes the gear. So just watching this now. To try and keep ourselves on glide slope. Still very challenging because look at how we're coming in on the side. Not the most easiest landing. We've got to climb slightly, but I think that's not a big problem. We can see the runway in front of us. We can see the windsock over here. And now it's basically just descend down to the runway. So when we get to pretty close, we'll just cut that throttle to idle. And we're on the ground. So that's the Piper Arrow 3 by JustFlight. It's a lot of fun. If it's something that interests you, maybe check it out. I believe the Turbo Arrow is also coming to Microsoft Flight Simulator. So we also have that to look at in the future. But for now, we've got this little turbo arrow free. It's really quite good, even how it is. It's not like you need the turbo arrow free. This plane is quite capable. And in fact, some of the turbo arrow free variants with the tail wing and stuff, they are quite challenging to fly, but that's part of the experience, just to have something else that's a little bit more challenging. You can see we're just rolling off the runway here. Going to have to give it a little bit of throttle just so we can keep moving. So I'm going to go down to here, just give it 1, 2, 3 or 5%, 4% will do. And we can roll over this way. Very, very easy to handle on the ground. You can see how it's dealt with some pretty windy conditions on the landing. I've shown you more than one landing. I haven't just shown you one landing. I've shown you a whole bunch of them. I'm giving you a pretty good idea of what it can capable of and what it can do. We've done loops, we've done stalls. We've shown how the gear can auto-deploy before. Although I didn't actually use that when I did the landing, I have manually landed it with the gear pushing open by me then. There's a fuel truck over there, and then there's also a refueling bay over there. So we'll go over towards the refueling bay, because that refuel truck won't refuel us. It would be cool if you could just go over to the refuel truck to refuel. Wherever there's a ground in the game, you could just fly over to it and then it would refuel you. That would be cool. There is some ground services mods for North America, I understand, which changes the skins and the liveries and the look and the advertisements so that they're more accurate to what they would be in real life. So that is something you can check out. But at the moment I'm in Australia, so that mod's not really going to be very helpful to me. Gently bring the plane over this way, and then we'll come to a stop. We'll see if we can get it to actually come up with the offer to put more fuel in the plane. If I can bring it close enough. That's not close enough. I'm just trying to angle it so that I can not take it out with my wing when I come to a final stop. So if I spin it out as hard as I can here, and then start turning it, and then we want to stop around about here. And there we go, we've got the fuel setting. So I'll put on my parking brake. I can give it full fuel. We can close that, and that's our plane. We'll try and do a quick shutdown. I'm not going to do anything very exhaustive. You remember I talked about the mixture lock? Just pull that all the way down, and that turns off the motor. And then you can take down the propeller. You can turn this all the way to the left. And you can turn all of these off. It'll come up with a big screen on the screen. We'll just hit continue, because we want it to continue. It would be great if we could also avoid that coming up all the time. Change my cockpit view now to something more normal, such as pilot. We can bring up this, and we can go over here. We can turn on shocks, tie downs, tow bar, cabin door, baggage door, and the oil door. We can put the left yoke back up so the plane looks normal. And we don't need a co-pilot. Everything is pretty much fine. You can see what the settings were from that flight. 11.9 volts on the battery and all quantity 8. And I'll just show you these screens for the sake of it. We've got flight info. It doesn't tell us very much at the moment. So not a lot of information once you've shut the plane down. Close that, turn that away. And that is the Piper Arrow. I think there's a few things you could pick up from this video. And hopefully I've gone into it with a little bit of detail. This is not considered a review. I'm just showing you the plane and my experience with it. So hopefully you can take away some things that I might have mentioned and use it if you can enjoy this plane as well. You can see the tow bar there, the chocks, the tie downs. It's a pretty cool little plane and definitely good for just exploring sights in the game, which is such a feature of this game. You can get an airliner, but you'll miss a lot of the detail that they've put into the ground. It's taken off from airport to airport. A little plane like this really gives you that opportunity to look at all that detail that they're putting into the game on the ground. I hope you enjoyed. Stay with the video and you'll be able to see a real close-up look of the original version of the Piper Arrow 3 without any of the mods. So now I have then shown everything. I've shown the modified version of the plane and I've also shown the original worn version of the plane. Enjoy the rest of your day and thank you for watching.
131 Charlie is type 1 miles south of Barfield. Request flight following. Walk tree 03131 Charlie. Copy tree 1 Charlie. Adelaide approach November 4131 Charlie is type 1 miles north of Barfield. Request flight following. Squawk 02 tree 131 Charlie. Copy tree 1 Charlie. Charlie. Going to 124.231 Charlie. Adelaide approach November 4131 Charlie 1,600 feet. Mach 3.